So the kids get lost and no one's gonna stay. Yeah, Chuck T's and beasties with Dingo Mohawk hair. Right, misfits and homeless kids all call the home there. Don't tell me it ain't real, don't you fucking dare. Set Paul's pile in the car, nothing going on. Turn off the radio cause it's my favorite song. There's a club on the coast where all the kids get along. Skids and punks and wayward ones, nothing can go wrong. Saturday, we're outside the killer cold. There's no way I'm gonna end up at that disco. Make my way through fist fights and stilettos. To rock and roll, rock and roll. Saturday, we're outside your killer cold. There's no way I'm gonna end up at that disco. Make my way through fist fights and stilettos. To rock and roll, rock and roll, rock and roll. To rock and roll, rock and roll. You know what? When I show up, there's gonna be some fucking action. Show me the signs, lost the wild, that's the fucking attraction. She said, when I fuck 'em up, that's her satisfaction. Bottle of red, straight ahead, detail transaction. Hell, six to spend my neighborhood, it was always understood. I was running out for the angels, I was a little fucking hood. When rock was my way out, it was always in my blood. I don't give a fuck, I was locked up, should be dead or in jail. Saturday, we're outside your chemical. There's no way I'm gonna end up at the disco. Make my way through fist fights and stilettos. So rock and roll, rock and roll. Saturday, we're outside your chemical. There's no way I'm gonna end up at the disco.